Welcome to Unlocking the Parenting Code, all about boys. I'm Kathy, and this season is dedicated to exploring the unique world of raising boys. Parenting boys today can feel like trying to crack a complicated code, a mystery, especially when it comes to understanding their inner emotional world. Together, we'll dive into real-life stories, share practical tips, and uncover insights to help you and your son thrive, not just survive. So grab your coffee, settle in, and let's unlock the parenting code, one boy at a time. Hi, I'm Kathy, your host, and I'm excited to have you join me today for my first solo episode. We're going to talk about some of the critical issues that we need to be thinking about in order to understand and protect the inner emotional world of our boys. Some of the references to statistics that I'll mention mostly come from North America or other developed countries, but the main point is that boys really are in crisis today. And so wherever you're raising your son, being aware of the world that he's growing up in or of a society that he might move into in the future is really important. One of the people that resonates with me deeply about trying to understand more about boys is Richard Reeves. And he wrote a book called The Boy Crisis. And he notes a number of different statistics connected with education, with the social environment, with mental health, and so on. He says that boys are falling behind in school compared to the girls. They're more likely to get lower grades, be diagnosed with learning disabilities like ADHD, and drop out of school. They're significantly less likely to pursue higher education. And in the States right now, 60% of the college students are female, which is a very big switch from even 30, 40 years ago. He also notes that boys are 50% more likely than girls to fail basic proficiency in school by the end of elementary. So there's a lot of things that are connected with education that as parents and teachers, we need to be aware of those things so that we can support their learning and their learning styles better. We'll talk a little bit further later on. He also talks about mental health, and he says that boys are more prone to depression, anxiety, and behavioral disorders, but they're less likely to seek help. So we often don't know. And it also looks different. How those behaviors show up in boys is very different than the way they show up in girls. As boys grow older, the suicide rate for males, particularly in their teens and young adulthood, becomes significantly higher than for females. For boys aged 15 to 19, the suicide rate is almost 4 times higher than it is of girls. I have a blog where on the website, Sonhood Coaching, where I tell you some of the statistics and some of the startling revelations around male suicide. And it's something to be aware of because even though we might think, oh, that won't be my son, it could be your son or your son's best friend. The more aware we are of things, the more knowledge we have, the more support we can give those boys, our boys and other boys. Another issue with boys growing up today is that a lot of males feel a real lack of purpose and direction. And so that contributes to their struggles in education and mental health. Without a clear expectation from society or strong, consistent roles of what healthy masculinity is, boys can experience confusion around what it means to be a man in the world today. And that will contribute to feelings of isolation and frustration. The statistics really are alarming. And sometimes I have to stop looking at them because they're overwhelming sometimes. But they're also a wake-up call. And so today we're going to talk a little bit about societal and emotional challenges that boys face, and then some of the things we can do to help support them better. So if you've ever wondered how to help your son or a student, a little boy in your class, or just a boy in your life, and how to navigate the pressures of growing up, hopefully this episode will be one that gives you some tips and guidelines and strategies to use. Let's begin to break the boy code together. So let's start with school. I have spent 4 decades in the educational system, and the majority of it in early years and early elementary, and the last 10 in leadership roles. So I have a really wide range of experiences connected with, especially with younger boys, and how they struggle often in early education. And it's really not the fault of their own. There are some developmental differences between little boys and little girls. And then there are also differences in the learning style that the school provides. And the learning style that schools provide, especially in elementary and early years, is really geared more to the style of little girls. Like I can remember being, so excited to start school and loved school and would come home and I'd play school. I have never, in all of my years, ever experienced or heard of a little boy who went home and played school. So that's a bit, if you're really curious about things and you start looking a little bit deeper than the surface, you'll see a lot of these things just that kind of make sense. So there's something a little bit off with our system and the expectations we have for boys in this time period. So what are some of the things we can do? The very first thing to understand is that boys and girls, they learn in a different way. They often thrive, they thrive when it's hands-on, movement-based learning environments. They want to use their bodies, they want to explore, they want to build, they want to move. And that's usually not the environment that our classrooms are designed for. So we can understand this, understand the way of their learning, and then we can advocate to schools and try to get them to understand and adopt some teaching strategies that consider these developmental differences, or even exposing the teachers to more of some of this research so that they will be able to step in and understand and accommodate some of those learning differences so that the little boys maybe eventually start to go home and they want to play school too. We can also state the case for having our boys start a year later than girls. Developmentally, that makes so much sense. And finally, as parents and educators, we would be doing our boys a real service by focusing on their efforts rather than the outcomes. Because when we're mindful of the challenges that the system is creating for them, their successes academically might not be that frequent. And so it can kind of spiral out into, more low self-esteem, and the results shouldn't be the focus. Focus on the effort that he's putting into doing the best he can, and congratulate him and commend him for that. So the next big area is mental health. And like I said, there's something on the website about suicide, male suicide, and everything that I listen to. I'm a little bit of a nerd or geek or whatever that word is, but I'm fanatic about podcasts and I listen to them all the time because I want to keep learning more and more and more. And because, things change so quickly as well. And the things that I hear, the new statistics, the new research development that's being done, it's saddening for me when they talk about how lonely, young males are, how limited their opportunities to have meaningful relationships with partners, and that joy that comes from loving a partner and having that respectful relationship. And if you're lucky enough to have a family, all those things are more challenging for young men now than they have ever been. When you think about the mental health issues, it's mind-boggling. And anytime that I've had the opportunity to talk to young men, like my son is in his early 30s. He's 31. So I have sometimes the opportunity to talk to males in their 20s and mostly 20s and 30s. And they always react so shocked when I say something and they kind of look at me like a deer with head in the headlights, and it's like you understand that? You understand that's what's happening, in our world. You get it. And that recognition, that validation should be much more widespread. And so I do what I do. So let's look at some of the statistics. I already said that the boys between 15 to 19 are 4 times more likely to commit suicide than girls the same age. By the age of 18, 1 in 5 boys has experienced a major depressive episode. And the scary thing is often that won't be noticed or responded to. So if you have looked into any of my work, or if you're, really interested in the inner emotional world of boys, you probably have heard of the boy code or the man box. And those are the expectations that society places on our males. And, uh, you know, inadvertently or directly, let males know what's acceptable as far as behavior. Like, what does it really mean to be a male in our society? What are the rules that you need to follow to fit in? And we know some of them, but I'm going to refresh your memory. One of them is that, thing that boys don't cry. You don't show any vulnerability at all. And what that does is it teaches the boys to push those emotions down, to put on a mask. And over time, when too many masks have been put on to hide the real, authentic, vulnerable child in there, sometimes they will lose the ability to tap into that little guy inside there. And it just creates a world of cruelty and hardness and not being authentic, being the man that society says this is what you have to be in order to be the man, to be cool. So don't show any signs of vulnerability. The boy code and man box also talk about aggression and dominance. So there's a cultural expectation for boys to be physically and mentally strong. And often that comes at a cost to don't be so empathetic, don't be so cooperative, like really put on the macho, stoic kind of thing. And there is an area around independence. So boys are encouraged to separate from like their mom really early, to solve their problems on their own, to be independent and don't show any signs of weakness at all. And also, society kind of pushes boys to measure their self-worth and their accomplishments. And that kind of promotes this need that the boys always need to prove themselves. They always have to be, at the top of the game. So they, all of their emotions can kind of get scrambled up when the messages that they're receiving, especially when it's by people they love and respect. But when those people don't understand that perhaps unconscious gender biases are influencing how they are reacting to their sons, how they are communicating with their sons, how they're disciplining their sons, all of those things come into place. And the young boy will not take the chance on losing his connection with those very important people by being different than what they say he should be. So if they say you don't cry when you're hurt, you do not cry when you are hurt. And then it becomes a vicious spiral. Often when boys are having mental events, like when there's something that is not smooth in their world, rather than breaking down in tears or talking about their problems, often it's one or two behaviors that you'll see. One is that they will just shut down, they'll completely shut down, or the other is that they will become quite aggressive and behaviors will be challenging. So a lot of times that's what happens in school. You have little boys who are struggling with all this inner turmoil and chaos, and then they start, having trouble. They're fighting on the playground. They're talking back to the teacher. They're not, cooperating in the classroom. And it's really important to remember then, anytime there's misbehavior, rather than just looking at the behavior and dealing with the behavior, go a little bit deeper than that, because behind every single misbehavior, there is an unmet emotional need. And until you can understand that unmet emotional need, you cannot give your son the support and guidance that he needs in order to be more successful the next time a similar situation happens. So I know it's sounding a little bit, doom and gloom, but it really isn't. And one of the really amazing things is that there's research you can look at. I'm not good with pulling up figures and remembering the exact information as it's coming up. But I do know, both from the research and from my own personal experience over the years, even with being in a society where there are a lot of mixed messages or negative messages or messages that don't really resonate with a boy, even with all those factors going against him, if he has one adult in his life, could be his mom, could be his dad, if he's really lucky, it's both. It could be a special teacher he connects with. It could be anybody. But if that child even just has that one person who gets them, who understands the challenges they're facing, who supports them, loves them unconditionally, and provides an environment where they can be themselves, where they don't have to worry about being ridiculed or embarrassed or shamed, where they can be accepted and valued and know that they're loved. If they have just that one person, the chances of them coming out good on the other side are really high. So we might not be able to change the systems. We might not be able to change society, but we can change what's happening in our homes, and we can make sure that our sons have that environment that is going to let them thrive. So, since we're talking about environment, we need to, as parents, as a society, we need to challenge those messages that our sons are being given. If you start looking at media and you look at what, the messages that are coming from songs, it's quite interesting. And if you look at it, say decade by decade, to see what the differences are in the messages that are being given, it is quite an interesting experience to have. I don't know how sometimes boys are able to come out so strong, because when I listen to some of the music about, girl power and, girls can do anything, and, boys are just kind of stupid, sidekicks. And when they're the brunt of jokes, when they're referred to in really derogatory manners, and when you see them on TV where, we don't have enough media that is showing what, a balanced humanity would be, where both males and females are recognized for their, challenges and their gifts, and how to work together, for a harmonious life. But we, as parents, if we can remember that the messages that these little boys are receiving, and older boys, about what it means to be a boy, we can actively take take steps to try to counter that. So we can tell them stories. We can talk about those males that are really great examples of someone who embodies a balanced and healthy form of masculinity. We can point those out. We can emphasize them. When we see things on the media or we um, hear things in the songs, we can talk about it and bring it up and let them know, yes, that's what that person is saying, but that doesn't mean that you have to take that's about you. It's they need to understand that they're just fine the way they are. They're better than fine. But those messages, if you're constantly bombarded with them, they can create havoc with a little boy's self-esteem. So the takeaway from all this is quite simple. Boys need our understanding and our support, and they need us to advocate for them. When we can create the environments where they can express themselves to grow into healthy adults, we're not just raising remarkable men, we're building a better future for everyone. So take small steps, one thing at a time. Reach out if you need some support, learn a little bit more. We can do better for our boys, and those small steps will make a huge difference in the inner emotional world of your boy. So thank you for joining me today. It was a little different. I really had to think that I was talking to people out there and not just talking to myself. So I hope that you found the episode helpful. And if you did, please share it with a friend. And don't forget to subscribe and rate and review, and check the show notes for resources to help you along your parenting journey. And together we really can make a difference. So until next time, remember, unlocking the parenting code isn't about having all the answers. It's about learning and growing and supporting each other along the way. If you're a parent raising a boy in today's complex world, be sure to explore sonhoodcoaching.com. You'll discover expert guidance and support designed to help you unlock your full parenting potential. As Amelia Gambetti says, this job is too difficult and too beautiful to do alone. Together we can explore this adventure and discover the magic of raising boys.